Hello and welcome to the Gladdest YouTube channel. In this episode, I'm going to be doing a partial deep dive and analysis of the Back 4 Blood PvP Swarm gameplay showcase. Super interesting stuff. A lot of things to be excited about, but a lot of things to be a little worried about. I know a lot of the conversations happening right now are around, are they going to have more PvP game modes? Are they going to have a campaign-esque versus 4v4? Because a lot of people were expecting them to showcase that, but they didn't. So I will be talking about that throughout the video and at the end, so stay tuned. Definitely a hot take item, so we'll be talking about that for sure. I posted on my channel a full Back 4 Blood alpha review. If you haven't seen that, be sure and check it out. I'll put a little link up here. I go really in depth into the mechanics, the gameplay, the style choices, you know, if it really does feel like a spiritual successor to the Left 4 Dead franchise, the series. Also, there's tons of Back 4 Blood gameplay footage that I have. I have a video where I analyze every single card in Back 4 Blood. Tons of spicy content on that front, so be sure and check that out too. Without further ado, let's jump in. I'll be pausing too. I'll be pausing the video throughout the video they have, just kind of talk about certain things. All right, here we go.
Hello and welcome to the Back 4 Blood PvP Showcase. If you don't already know, Back 4 Blood is an upcoming 4-player co-op zombie shooter made by the creators of Left 4 Dead.
Most certainly is.
Today we're diving deeper into the new PvP mode called Swarm, how it works, and what you'll be doing. Maybe even a little bit of strategy. We'll also talk with Turtle Rock's lead game designer on Back 4 Blood, Brandon Yanez, to help piece it all together. Before we get there though, let's start off with the reveal of a brand new PvP trailer and see what it's like in action.
All right, let's do that. Okay, tall boy walking in. Propane tank, alright. This shot is pretty interesting to me because it kind of shows like... It's super interesting because it shows the survivor like super high up like on a perch, which then makes me think like... we'll get into the Swarm PvP game mode is kind of like a survival-esque PvP game mode, but it seems like the maps might be pretty huge. They seem to be pretty far away here, but we'll see.
Down.
Something else to notice here, you can see the wretch there puking in an arc. Something I noticed in the alpha and something that I hope they took a look at or take a look at. The wretch is, you know, kind of like a spitter boomer mix, and I remember seeing in the alpha in the last chapter, I remember where you're at like that cruise liner kind of ship, right? And you're the military shows up and you go over to them. And when you're standing over by where the military is, I remember I turned around and I looked at the ship and I saw a wretch on the far back side of the ship and it puked and the arc went over the entire cruise liner ship, like the entire thing. And it landed like on the front of the ship, which made me think to myself, okay, that's really, really overpowered. I hope that they took a look at that. It seems like it's a little bit too far, a little bit too powerful. You can kind of see here, it's going off screen. I don't know how far off screen it goes. It looks to be a little bit more contained in this, but too hard to really tell for sure. Oh, he just Assassin's created that comment. Yeah, there's that timer. They keep showing the timer. Well, that's what this guy gets for going off and shopping on their own.
This is what happens when you don't stick together.
Something super interesting here that I kind of want to talk about. I'm going to talk about it again later, and they talk about it. This scene here.
This is what happens when you don't stick together.
Right here. So they're going to talk about later where every person on a 4v4 team, when you're playing as a special infected, you could pick a special infected to play as. And this makes me think, it's a PvP showcase, it makes me think that players on the same team can pick the same special infected, which I think sounds super interesting and cool. I'm sure there are pros and cons attached with it, like in Left 4 Dead 2, obviously, if everybody on the special infected team could pick the same specials, everybody's going to pick a charger, right? And everyone's going to pick a spitter, and they're all going to coordinate and just, you know, do super overpowered attacks. So maybe they'll make it so you could cap it, but 3 boomers here, 3 exploders. Super interesting. I wonder if an entire team could pick them. That puke lasted for a long time, too. This infected seems super interesting because there's basically the tall boys, and there seems to be like 3 different variants of each special infected. I think it's about 3. The tall boy shown here, I can't remember the exact name of this tall boy, but like walks up, picks him up, and does like it appears to be like a damage over time, kind of like when the hunter pounces on somebody, you know, they just stay in place but deal damage until they die. So this seems very similar. Super interesting. Seems like it has a lot more health than the hunter equivalent. Earn upgrades. Yep. Those cards, they're probably talking about the loadout cards and whatnot. Also, the special infected can get upgrades too, as they'll talk about in a moment. See, that puke went pretty far, but not too far. Not too far. October 12th. Around the corner, unless it gets pushed back again. Not sure.
That looked intense. So there you have it, guys. Back 4 Blood's PvP mode, Swarm. To hear more about it and to take a deep dive into the gameplay and the mechanics, we have Turtle Rock's lead game designer on Back 4 Blood, Brandon Yanez. Brandon,
yes.
Can you tell us
Take me away, Brandon. Take me away.
PvP mode and what makes it fun and unique?
Of course, so just like our previous titles, we really enjoy bringing new ideas to the table while retaining the spirit of the genre that we're working in. So Back 4 Blood's...
That's a big item too to talk about, just the spirit of the genre, right? Because like I said before, and I talk about this in the Left 4 Dead, or not the Left 4 Dead, the Back 4 Blood Alpha review too. A big part of this and a big element of this game is that it is essentially a spiritual successor to the Left 4 Dead series, right? I don't think it's, it's a Left 4 Dead 3, so to speak, but they're trying to make it be its own thing, have its own style, have its own, path, right? But keeping the spirit of the franchise alive, I think, is super important, and what a lot of people who want to play this game, especially players coming from Left 4 Dead 2, are honestly expecting. Which I hope they can live up to it too. I think it's important to not expect too much in line of it being similar to Left 4 Dead, but I think it's important to note that this is basically a spiritual successor, as it seems.
PvP is heavily inspired by our previous titles that mix survival, fast action, massive monsters, and a touch of horror. So our goal is to make a balanced and fun PvP mode with just as much...
Key word here, balanced and fun PvP mode, which is a very bold statement these days, especially with a lot of PvP games. Balanced and fun, so we'll keep that in mind as we keep watching.
So what's the structure of the PvP like? Do you play in rounds? Can you play as both cleaners and ridden in one match, or are we swapping between the two?
Yeah, so it's played as a best of 3 match. Teams of 4 take turns swapping between the ridden and cleaner players. The job of the cleaners is to scavenge supplies, find a good place on the map to fortify their position, and try to last as long as they can. Okay. The ridden's main objective...
The game mode seems very similar to the survival game mode in Left 4 Dead, right? And they have like this, Left 4 Dead survival PvP mode, which doesn't have as much players in it as the normal versus, obviously. So I'm surprised they're kind of leaning into this as a game mode and not the campaign versus. So let's recap kind of what we know so far. So it's basically a survival versus. Both teams are basically fighting to survive longer than the other team did, and it's best of 3. So it seems like the games they probably won't last that long. Like, they might last, like it showed in the video, like 3 minutes and 51 seconds, right? I wonder if it'll be a lot longer than that. It probably will be, like maybe like 10 to 15 minutes. It'll be really interesting to see. As he said, hopefully it's going to be balanced and fun. And in that case, hopefully a team won't just be able to wait out in one corner in the map and wait there for 20 minutes, so something to keep in mind.
Objective is to kill the cleaners as fast as they can. So this is achieved by choosing the right ridden to counter the other team's strategy, using mutation upgrades, and by coordinating attacks with other AIs and players.
Pretty big point that they're going to talk about.
The swarm moves in, so this increases the size of the ridden attacks and shrinks the playable space, sometimes forcing the cleaners out of their favorable positions, right?
another interesting point here that they're talking about, kind of like in Call of Duty Warzone or, other battle royales, where basically the further into the game it gets, the more condensed and the more like closed in the players become, right? Like the outer ring that you can't pass gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So hopefully that'll help to make it so that teams can't just wait in one area the entire time. Hopefully the game will kind of push them out of those situations, making teams more uncomfortable, pushing them to be in unfavorable positions and having them really try to adapt and react properly to the special infecteds coming in and whatnot. So super interesting on that front. And also we'll see here, this timer on the top left is counting down. Not this one, but we'll see in a second. See, it's counting down 6, 5, 4, 3, right? So it makes me think that if one team, how it seems like it's going to do it is if one team basically lasts 4 minutes, let's say, then the next team, it's going to count down from 4 and not count up. So it's kind of like one team gets 4. If the next team comes in, they don't have an opportunity to wait till like 6 minutes. All they have to do is get past 4 and then they win. Pretty interesting. I wonder if they're going to have like a point system attached to waiting longer, but the way that it's showing it here, the counting down and counting up, I don't think so. Interesting to think about though, because in Left 4 Dead 2, for example, I remember one of the big changes from just public versus and pro mod, which is basically a mod of Left 4 Dead 2 versus that professional Left 4 Dead 2 players play on. Basically, in normal PvP and normal public versus, when an entire team gets to the end, every survivor gets 25 points who actually made it to the end, right? So if all 4 survivors make it, you get an extra 100 points. If 2 of them make it, you get an extra 50 points. But in pro mod, when a team gets to the end, how much points they get is entirely based upon how much health they had when they entered the safe room. So I think it'd be really interesting to see them kind of attach a point system like that to this, but it doesn't look like they will. But it made me think about it. Something
out of their favorable position.
Something interesting.
So when a cleaner team is wiped from the field, the points are scored for how long they survive. Then both teams
points
swap,
scored, right? So it might just be time. Maybe they have points, but probably not.
Longest as the cleaners is the winner.
Now, I understand you can play
Whoever lasts the
as
longest
all
is the
the
winner.
different cleaners in both co-op and PvP. Do you have a favorite character that you play as?
So I have a couple. I play Mom a lot. She's a badass with sawed.
Something really interesting to see here too is that something I noticed in the alpha, a lot of the cards, for example, there are some cards that seem completely essential. Like every team should have this card in their deck, right? And then there also were a handful of cards that made me think like, these cards totally suck. Like, why would anybody have these cards in the deck, right? And it seems like with a character like Mom that's showcased here, +1 support inventory, +1 team extra life, like that seems incredibly strong and incredibly powerful. So it makes me think like, okay, so just looking at this description of Mom here, every single team should have this character on the team because you get the extra team life and 1 support inventory. Like that's incredibly powerful. So I hope, going back to what he said, balanced and fair, it makes me think if the game is going down a direction, down a path that leads towards just meta gameplay, right? If there's going to be 100 cards, are only 20 of them the ones that everyone's going to pick of, let's just say they have, DLC characters coming in and all the cleaners and whatnot. And let's say there's 20 cleaners. Well, really only 5 of them are good. So everyone's going to pick these 5. And I think Mom would be one of them because having that extra team life is incredible. So either they need to make the other cleaners be extremely powerful too, making every single one of them being viable. But it's something to think about here. I hope they make it balanced and fun, but I hope that it doesn't lean into the whole like, well, we're just going to pick these cards and these cleaners because that's just what we need to do to win, right?
Shotgun. She adds a lot of survivability to the team. She can also instantly help teammates that have fallen.
See, that's incredible. Being able to pick people up immediately, amazing.
Let's jump into another trailer that goes a little more in depth on the Ridden's progression through PvP. Check it out.
Let's do it. The Reeker, the Wretch. So the Reeker fast hitting melee, it seems like a charger in the sense where it just kind of runs in. It doesn't seem like it charges, but it runs in and just like punches people. And one thing that me and my friends who play Left 4 Dead with me in my other Left 4 Dead 2 videos, the versus games, a lot of the time as charger, you kind of sometimes just want to run in there and punch them. Like you don't even really want to charge. A lot of people will punch a couple times and then charge here. So it seems like this is just taking the idea of like just run in there and punch them, basically. It seems like it's a variant of the Wretch, so maybe it blows up upon death. I don't know for sure though. The Wretch, the Vomit Blast, as we've seen before, the Spitter, AoE damage. Exploder, Explosion on Death. It says Explosion on Death here, but it seems to be like a player can decide. They talk about it like a player can decide when to blow up, and as you can see here on screen, its chest is starting to blink a lot. So it seems like a player can start the countdown to blow up, or just choose to blow up whenever they want, which is super cool. I would love in Left 4 Dead 2 if the Boomer could just like, if you could like rocket off of a roof and just like spawn around a corner and just blow up whenever you want. That would be really cool as a Boomer. Then you're not like, confined to blowing up when they kill you only, and then people could just like M2 you and push you back and blow you up. So that doesn't seem like the case here. It seems like this Boomer Explosion equivalent special is pretty tough. So it seems like it's not quite as easy to kill as a Boomer who dies in just a couple shots with pretty much any weapon. At least one shot, 1 to like 3 with pretty much any weapon. So Stinger, light range attack, and wall cling. That's that one where they cling on the wall and they shoot like that web at people and stop them. The Stalker seems like I talked about before, like a hunter jockey kind of combo where they stay on a wall and then jump onto somebody, but then they don't like act like a hunter and like pin them down and just keep doing damage. It seems like they just jockey them away, which I kind of like. I know that one of the least liked special infecteds in Left 4 Dead 2 is the jockey, because it doesn't do that much damage. There's not that much pizzazz. It's not like a charger, right, where you can just run in there and do so much damage and like clutch win for your team, right? And the jockey seems very much to be like a smoker, where it's like a support common, or a support special infected, where you jockey on top of somebody, a charger comes in, starts to punch them a lot, or like you set somebody up for a death charge. It seems like that's kind of what this special is more like in this game. But it has a little bit more versatility and a little bit more dexterity, so you can kind of go onto walls and really get nice angles on people. But it seems ultimately to be just more of like a support infected. So I don't foresee a lot of people picking this one if they can choose. So different tall boy variants. You have the tall boy where they like run in and smash the hammer. Hopefully, I know in the alpha, like when the tall boy like kind of like ran in and smashed the club down, I remember seeing some of them charge like from like 80 feet away, super long. I don't know if it's a bug. I kind of hope it is. I think that the charging from that far away and like slamming the hammer down is a little bit too overpowered, but something to think about. And the Crusher here, kind of like I talked about before too, where they pick up the Survivor and they seem to do like some damage over time effects on a Survivor until they die, probably, or until like the arm is shot off or something like that. The Bruiser seems to be like a charger punching special with a frenzy ability. Yep, we're seeing basically all the specials in action now.
Okay, so Brandon, we just saw that each different Ridden has their own variants as well as their own mutations on each variant. So can you expand a little more on these special abilities and how they work?
Sure. So at the start of each round, players can choose between 9 playable Ridden, each with their own unique abilities. So for example, the Stalker can pounce a player and pull them away from their team.
So like he's saying here too, that players when they join the game can pick which special infected they play as. Super interesting. I think that allows for a lot of customization in terms of strategies you can employ and different routes you want to take in terms of just dealing a lot of damage or being more strategic in your approach to attacking the survivors. Seems very interesting. But it seems like we'll see how it evolves. Obviously, I don't know, like none of us have played on most of these specials, so it's going to be tough to see like which ones might be overpowered, which ones might be the ones people lean into more than others. But we'll see how that plays out in the beta.
Time their detonation in the middle of a group of cleaners and fling them all in separate directions.
Now, knowing that
He also said fling here too. I know that in Left 4 Dead 2 as the boomer, if you explode in a group of people, they kind of like stumble back, you know, and at high levels of play, a boomer might specifically place themselves in a position where when they blow up, they might knock somebody off of a ledge so the survivor starts to hang on the ledge, right? But he says fling people away, which makes me think that if that blows up, like it'd be super interesting to see, like if they fly back like 10, 15 feet, like that would be crazy. And super interesting to see too if there's like a lot of like cliffs and ledges that survivors can just fall off and die. Like interesting placements can be made to just fling people off the side and just
has these different abilities. How do they change and improve throughout a match and improve the Ridden's chance of winning?
So as the Ridden battle against the Cleaners, they gain points. They can spend these points on team-wide upgrades called mutations.
Team-wide
Mutations
upgrades.
upgrade and improve a lot of different things on the Ridden side, from adding effects to their abilities. They might buff the common AI waves in size and strength. So the really cool thing.
So 2 things to note here that I thought were pretty interesting. The fact that all the upgrades seem to be very team-oriented. I originally thought you would be able to upgrade and use a mutation on your own special infected, like just the one that you picked individually, but it seems like from what they're saying that all mutations are completely team-based. But one of the things that they mentioned here, there's a mutation where you could enhance the common horde, and I say it a lot too in my Left 4 Dead videos. My least favorite special infected are the common infected because there are just so many of them and my horde clear is horrible. But it seems like being able to buff the horde as a whole, like if a team just leaned into that would be really, really crazy. Because if you buff the horde that much and there's a whole bunch of horde, which it seems like there's more horde in this game than there was in Left 4 Dead 2, really crazy if you just can buff the horde. That seems really, really powerful.
Thing is, so they affect the whole team and they persist between rounds.
Affect the whole team, persist between rounds.
Team starts to coordinate their upgrades, things can get pretty wild.
So as round 2 or 3 come into play, like your team can get pretty powerful.
In order to get a leg up on the competition.
If the Cleaners are really sticking together, you can swap to the Wretch and vomit on their location. That's going to cause them.
You can swap to the Wretch too, also very interesting. So it seems like you can pick a special infected at the beginning, and also during the game, you can switch potentially. I don't know if you could only switch between rounds. It seems like you could switch in game, like when you go in as a tall boy and you die, then you can just decide to switch and spawn into something else. Maybe that would be super, super cool, which is exciting. Left 4 Dead 2, I don't know if that would really be cool to have in Left 4 Dead 2 because everybody, like I said, everybody would pick the hunter, the spitter, the charger, and the boomer, right? So like if I was playing with my friends and we could pick who we spawned in as, we'd probably pick those 4 every time, unless we wanted to get a death charge and smoke somebody or jockey somebody. But like no one's going to pick the smoker or jockey if they're not going to set up, you know? So interesting. Something to think about.
To spread out, right? This is going to open up a whole bunch of opportunities for your other Ridden players to attack, right? So if you get them to spread out and there's a Stalker nearby, Stalker uses the Chaos to grab one of the Cleaners and drag them off into the swarm. The Wretch's Vomit also slows their victims, so if a tall boy
slow effects, very interesting.
Slow, can attack one of those slowed characters, they're going to really be able to pummel them. Another good one is if a Exploder waits for a Cleaner to go revive their friend, they can use that as an opportunity to charge in and detonate on them, sending them flying and doing a massive amount of damage.
Ooh, sounds pretty brutal. So with that being said, which is your favorite Ridden to play as?
That has to be the Tall Boy. It's pretty easy to pick up and play, and I have a lot of
Tall Boy seems really, really good, and from what I played in the alpha,
let's talk about
they're pretty
weapons
good.
now. Throughout the trailers, you can see a number of different weapons. Can you go a little deeper into what those weapons are and how they work?
So we really wanted to expand on the amount of choices the player had in Back 4 Blood.
Which is great.
So of
I'm
course
super
there's
happy that they're doing
handguns,
that.
shotguns, LMGs, SMGs, sniper rifles, and a whole bunch of other types of weapons, each with sort of like a unique character feel to them.
Now, how deep does this weapon customization go? I really want to know. What are some of the different attachments and
Hopefully
options,
pretty
and how
deep.
do they
Hopefully
change
pretty
the
deep.
gameplay overall?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of different customization options for your weapons. So throughout the world, you can find scopes, silencers, stocks, sights, all that good stuff. You can mix and match them. So there's a ton of options.
Last question. Do you have a favorite?
Didn't really talk too much about him, but
as I said earlier,
a lot of
really
customization.
enjoyed playing Mom, so her shotgun is definitely at the top of my list.
Ah, that's a solid
Mom's
choice.
shotgun doesn't seem very
All right,
good.
We've learned
I don't
a
know.
little bit about
Like,
how it all
you gotta
works,
focus on
the
horde clear
cleaners,
too.
the ridden, the
It better do a lot of
mutations, as well
damage.
as how the customization works for the weapons. Thank you so much for joining me, Brandon, and for giving us a little bit more detail on Back 4 Blood's new PvP mode, Swarm.
Thanks for having me. I can't wait for everyone to get their hands on this game. We're all really excited.
I can't wait either. The good news is that you guys won't have to wait too long. There's an open beta coming up on August 12th with an early access portion on August 5th available to those who pre-order. That's all for today, but Back 4 Blood still has a lot more to reveal in the coming months, so stay tuned. Bye.
Stay tuned, everybody. Be sure and stay tuned. Okay, so a good amount of things to, I guess, kind of unpack here, right? So like I said at the very beginning, there are a lot of things to be really excited about, and a lot of things to be a little worried about, right? So one of the things that I think is most exciting is the fact that they are really leaning into diversifying one's gameplay, and I think that that's rooted in the immense amount of the plethora of cards you can choose from with your loadouts. And being able to really customize amongst your, for yourself, but also amongst an entire team if you're playing with 3 other friends. Super, super cool and diverse gameplay leads to a lot of replayability, which I think is really, really interesting. And also just being able to pick different cleaners and being able to pick of the 9 different special infecteds. I think it's really cool, and I think it's leaning into a lot of really cool and diverse gameplay, which is really exciting. Something else I think is super exciting too, like I said in the review too, is that this game really seems to carry the spirit of the Left 4 Dead series, which I'm super happy about. The graphics look phenomenal, right? But the art style and the art direction seems to be very closely related to Left 4 Dead, which I'm really happy about. It looks like a more polished Left 4 Dead. It looks like a, more bright and vibrant. Some have said a little bit more like cartoony, like the blood is super like red and like bright and stuff, which I could totally see. But I think that they really kept to the atmosphere and the feel of the game, and it really feels like a Left 4 Dead 3 in a lot of ways, which I think is super cool. Then again, there are some things to be worried about. One of the big things that I think is worrisome, like I mentioned once or twice in this video, is being able to, with all these cards to choose from and all these cleaners to choose from, I have a feeling it's gonna lead to there being just meta cards and cards that just are the best, right? And cleaners that just are the best, like Mom. Like I don't see how a team wouldn't pick Mom for their team, because they just get 1 extra life for the team and they get to revive people instantly, like super powerful. Which then leads into the question of, so let's think about this for a second, right? There are tons of different cards to choose from, right? Let's say there are, after a couple months of the full release, let's just say there are 100 cards, right? And of those 100 cards, everybody's picking 20 of them because those 20 are the meta cards, right? And then, as we saw in the alpha, every time you progress from chapter to chapter, you pull 3 cards, I think it's 3 at random, and then you pick one of them to use. So if everybody's using the same meta deck, then it brings in an element of chance and luck to a game like Left 4 Dead, which is extremely PvP oriented. I think it allows some teams to have an unfair advantage if they just pull correctly. Not correctly, but if they pull, more lucky than the other team, right? Something to be a little bit worried about. Another thing too, so this is probably the biggest question I'm kind of seeing right now, just in different like forums and people talking about it, is this the only PvP mode? Is this all they're gonna have, right? And in Left 4 Dead 2, especially a lot of players who played Left 4 Dead 2 or coming into this really were expecting them to showcase a campaign-esque versus mode, and they didn't talk about it at all, which makes me question, are they even gonna have it? Like, I really, really hope they have a campaign versus mode, because like I said before, in Left 4 Dead 2, like the survival-esque versus modes just aren't as popular because there's not quite as much, I feel, replayability in those types of game modes, right? And it seems like in this case too, if a team only lasts like 3 to 5 minutes and the other team lasts 3 to 5 minutes and then they go again, like the games are going to be really short, which I think is really cool in one way. Then you don't have to invest like an hour of your time into like a Left 4 Dead 2 versus campaign, right? But I think it takes away from what a lot of people are expecting, which is a campaign-esque versus. And I remember too, when I was playing the alpha, one of the things I just kept thinking to myself about was, as I was playing the alpha and playing through with friends and going from point A to point B, right, as you do in a Left 4 Dead type game, I kept thinking to myself, how is this going to translate to PvP, right? And one of the biggest questions I had was, like, for example, when you encounter the ogre, which is 100% scripted, the same every time, it seems, at least for that map, I kept thinking, like, oh, so is a player going to be able to play as the ogre? Like, how is that going to work? And it just seems weird how it's going to translate, and you could just run past the ogre and completely ignore it. So I was like, oh, I wonder how that's going to translate, which makes me think now, seeing this, if they don't have a campaign versus mode, then that kind of answers my question of, like, what are they going to do about it? And the answer is they're not going to do it, which I hope isn't the case. I think that this is just my opinion, of course, but if they don't have a campaign versus, I don't foresee the game doing nearly as well as it could, especially because I think a lot of the people who are going to be buying and playing this game long term are going to be people who really enjoy the Left 4 Dead series for what it is, right? And especially the people who play the PvP. And of course, Left 4 Dead 2, inherently has a lot of replayability because you could play through the campaigns, the single player, as many times as you want, but where the real longevity exists and the real replayability exists is in that versus PvP. So they're going to have a versus PvP here. I'll just hit my mic. If they have a versus PvP here they have a versus PvP here as they're showing, but I don't think that this PvP necessarily kind of boasts crazy longevity. A lot of replayability in the sense of, every encounter is going to be different and unique, but kind of disappointing that they didn't talk about the campaign versus. So it's something that maybe they'll have it. Maybe this is just totally, they just didn't talk about it, but it seems like they might not, which I'm a little worried about. But let's keep our hopes up. Let's not be too pessimistic about this. I have high hopes for this game still, even after the alpha and after this PvP showcase. But of course, a lot of red flags, a lot of things to be worried about. But let's not kick it to the curb yet. I think it's still going to be, if they even didn't have campaign versus, I still think it's going to be pretty fun. But we'll see how it all plays out. I won't take up any more of your time. I appreciate you all coming to watch. This is the GLaDOS YouTube channel. Be sure and subscribe if you like the content. Leave a like down below. Let me know also in the comments below. Let me know what you think. I want to, I'd love to hear and read about all of your opinions about this PvP showcase and what the game looks like, where you think it's going. Does it look like garbage, or does it look like it's going to be pretty fun? Let me know your thoughts. But my main takeaway is that I'm excited for it still. I have high hopes. Very worried about certain things. I hope they have a campaign versus. I hope it doesn't lead into just complete meta gameplay, but we shall see in the coming days, weeks, months. We'll see what they say, and we'll see how the beta is and how the full release is too. So anyway, I will see you next time. Thank you so much.